Why are there so many Bible translations, and how do I even know which one to read? That's what we're talking about today. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of We Are the Church. I am excited for this one. A few weeks ago, we made a video breaking down what the Bible actually is. I'll add a card either here or there. I'll add a card so that you can go back and watch that, because really this video right now is kind of like a part 2 to that video. We talked all about what the Bible is, breaking down the history of it and how we can better understand it. But from there, after having made that video, so many friends let me know that it benefited them. But then when they go on the Bible app or they go on Amazon to buy their own Bible, they come back to me and they're like, Gabe, why are there so many different translations? How do I know which one to read? And I will absolutely admit, it can be very confusing. I remember when I first started reading the Bible, I was reading the King James Version, and I had no idea what in the world the Bible was even talking about. And this video is intended to tear down the barrier to entry so that you have a better understanding of all of the different translations, and we can answer today, once and for all, the question, what's the best translation for me to read? First of all, where did all the translations even come from? There are literally over 100 recorded Bible translations just in English. The original manuscripts of the Bible, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and in Aramaic, and the New Testament was written in Greek. And literally, it wasn't until the end of the 14th century, so like around 1380, where John Wycliffe wrote the very first English translation of the Bible. From that point, from the 14th century to now, over 100 different translations from the original manuscripts have been written in English. Now, with that being said, let me make it clear. There are no perfect English Bible translations. Get this, the Greek language alone has about 5 million words. Meanwhile, English has about 1 million words, meaning that Greek has over 5 times more words than English alone, making it kind of impossible to exactly translate the Bible word for word. But that has not limited translators from doing their very best to translate the word for word and the concepts of the scriptures. But with that being said, I want to show you something that I think is really going to help you understand what's going on with all of these different translations. Take a look at this line for me. Something I need you to understand is that every translation falls along this spectrum. This spectrum represents the degree of how much any translation is either a word for word, thought for thought, or a paraphrase. Understand that every single translation has significant value, but they all kind of play a different role in helping us to understand the original manuscripts of Scripture. Let's start with this end of the spectrum right here. This end of the spectrum is called the word-for-word translations. Translations like the New American Standard Bible, the English Standard Version, New King James, and of course the classic King James Version all fall under the category here of word-for-word translations. Scholars call it a formal equivalence to the original language, which is really just a fancy way of saying that this is the closest to verbatim that you're going to get in comparison to the original manuscripts. There's a lot of value in the word-for-word translations, but a lot of them tend to be older. Like King James was written in the 1600s, meaning that it uses words that we don't really use nowadays, and it makes it hard for us to understand. That's where the value of the middle of the spectrum comes into play. If we continue into the middle of the spectrum, we find what are called thought for thought translations. Some of the most popular translations in this category are the New International Version and the New Living Translation. These are more modern translations, which means that they use more modern language, hence making it easier for us to understand. The primary goal of these translations is to maintain the integrity of the original structure, but still modernizing the language so that you and I can better understand what the scriptures are trying to say. Scholars call this section of the spectrum a functional equivalence because it executes the same function as the original language, even though it may slightly deviate from the original words that were used. Again, trying to convey 5 million Greek words in simple, modern English, which is totally comprised of 1 million words, is a challenge, but the translators of these versions of the Bible did a phenomenal job. And that's why this area is one of the most commonly used for preachers and teachers, because it helps the listener to better understand what the scriptures are saying. And lastly, on the far side of the spectrum over here are the Bible paraphrases. Some of the most common paraphrases are the Contemporary English Version, the Passion Translation, and the Message Bible. Scholars call this area of the spectrum a retelling of the scriptures. They call it that because the authors of these paraphrases take the liberties that are necessary to use language to articulate the heart behind the original language. Let me give you a quick example. Romans 5:5 uses a simple phrase, God's love. If you look at the King James Version, a word-for-word translation, it says God's love. If you look at a thought-for-thought translation like the NIV, it says God's love. But once again, Greek has 5 times the amount of words that English does. And fun fact, in Greek, there are 5 different words for that one word that we have, love. We say things like, I love God, I love my wife, I love pizza, I love music. Now you and I know that this word love in all of those different examples all have different meanings, but at the end of the day, we only have one word to express our understanding of love. So when the word-for-word translators and the thought-for-thought translators saw all 5 of those words that in the Greek for love, they translated it into one word, love. However, the Passion Translation, which is a paraphrase, allows the translator the liberty to add language to help us better understand what word the Greek language was using when expressing that word love that we saw in Romans 5:5. So if you look at the Passion Translation of Romans 5:5, it doesn't just say God's love. No, it says the endless love of God. That speaks to an eternal, only God-like kind of love. The original Greek uses the word agape, which means unconditional and never-ending love. And that is why the paraphrases have so much value, because even though they may not be the exact words or the exact thoughts, they share the heart, sometimes even better than our limited words or thoughts are capable of. As we close here, I want to answer the question that we talked about at the beginning. What is the best Bible translation and which is the one that I should be reading? Before answering that, I want to give you a quick side-by-side comparison to show you the 3 different areas of the spectrum so that you have a better understanding as you look at the scriptures. And then hopefully this will help us to better answer the question, which translation should I read? As just a random example, let's use a popular scripture verse just to use as an example to show you these different translations. The King James Version says this, "These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." The New International Version says, "I have told you these things, so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world." And now look at the Passion Translation. It says this, "And everything that I have taught you is so that the peace which is in me will be in you, and will give you great confidence as you rest in me. For in this unbelieving world you will experience trouble and sorrows, but you must be courageous, for I have conquered the world." Do you see how all 3 of these compare? The original words, modern language, and then expressing in more words the heart behind what the thoughts and the words actually mean. Let me tell you one more time that every translation has so much value. And yes, every single person that you ask will probably give you a different answer to the question, which translation should I read? But if you ask me, Gabe, which translation do you think that I should read? My answer to you is that I think it's best to pick one from each 3 of the categories. I think it's important to have a word-for-word go-to, a thought-for-thought go-to, and a paraphrase go-to. For example, my daily read, something that I'm gonna be reading most of the time, is going to be something like the New International Version. It's easier to read and to understand, and because the language is more modern, it's easier for me to memorize. However, I know if I'm about to go into a deep study, which I love to do, and I wanna dive deep into the original language of the scriptures, I'm gonna go to the King James Version because it allows me to really dissect the scriptures and tie it back to the original manuscripts. And then on a personal level, when I feel like I need to connect to the heart of God through the scriptures more, I'll tend to read the Passion Translation. I love the paraphrases because it helps me to not get so stuck on the words of the book, but it actually, for me at least, really helps me to connect to the person of Jesus. And no, I'm not saying that I think that you need to go and spend a bunch of money on Amazon or go to a bookstore and buy every single version or buy 3 different versions even. I think that you should definitely utilize the resource of the Bible app. I love the YouVersion Bible app because literally in the palm of your hand, you can access every single translation. At the top, you can see my most recently used, but as you can see, you can click on any translation and it'll give you immediate access to any book of the Bible in any translation that you need. I hope this was helpful to you. I hope all of this information made sense. And at the end of the day, my goal is to help you to better understand the Bible so that you can dive into it for yourself. Because I believe that when we better understand our theology and we better understand this faith that we have, that's what makes us more effective in spreading the message of Jesus and telling the world around us about the God that we have come to know, the God that saved our soul and the God that has loved us to the depths. If this video has helped you, I want to encourage you to share it with somebody. I really feel like this series of faith fundamentals is such a great resource for all those who are new to the faith, who are growing in their faith, or even some who are seasoned and have just never heard this stuff before. God bless you, I love you, and I'll see you guys again next week. Hey, thanks so much for watching the We Are the Church YouTube channel. We really hope that this video was a blessing to you, and before you go, we want to make sure to let you know that there's some really awesome things coming in the near future for this channel, and we don't want you to miss out on any of it. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button and click the bell notification so that you can always be notified when we post new content.
Yes, and also make sure to follow us on Instagram. Instagram is a big place where we're gonna show like behind the scenes footage, bloopers. We wanna interact with you guys as well too. That's where we're gonna tell you about a lot of like secret things that are coming up. So make sure that you guys follow us on Instagram. It's gonna be amazing.
Thanks again so much for watching. We love you, God bless you, and remember, go out and be the church. This video is sponsored by Anchorhead Coffee. It's not. My wife and I have been here in Washington for a year, and honestly, Anchorhead is my favorite coffee. That is what we use for our espresso at the house, and it's literally, I'm down to use that for the rest of my life. It's that good. My wife texts me. Priorities? I'm gonna go bring her some lunch. See ya.